Swaniker, co-founder of the African Leadership Group. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this afternoon at the Concordia Annual Summit. Just before I get started with my first question, I just want to go through a couple key things worth noting. In recognition of your work in developing Africa's future leaders, you were selected as one of the 115 young leaders to meet the former US President Obama at the first ever President's Forum for Young African Leaders. Not only that, you were also recognized as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum, and you were listed on Forbes magazine among the top 10 power men in Africa in 2011. Okay, with that said, who is ALG, or the African Leadership Group?
The African Leadership Group is an ecosystem of institutions that is trying to achieve one thing, which is really to develop a new generation of leaders for Africa. We believe that leadership is the single most important thing to get right in Africa, and that Africa needs a new generation of ethical entrepreneurial leaders to really drive it to achieve its full potential. So our aim is to develop 3 million of these leaders over the next 2 decades.
3 million leaders, and I think I've heard you say it in less than 6,000
in 6,000 days. Yeah.
And just going back to what you mentioned earlier, a next generation of ethical entrepreneurial leaders, unpacking ethical, what does that really mean?
Ethical leaders, in my mind, are leaders who know the difference between right and wrong. It's really that simple. And leaders who understand that their role is to serve others in society and not to enrich themselves and not to be corrupt and not to steal, and so many things that we see, unfortunately, our leaders doing today. So it's about saying leaders who have a moral compass and who make decisions that benefit those that they are put in place to lead. It's that simple. And entrepreneurial leaders are leaders who are able to solve complex problems with limited resources in creative ways. And so Africa needs those kinds of leaders because we don't have many resources, we don't have a lot of time, and we have very complex problems. So we're trying to create people who have both this unique problem-solving mentality and an ethical and moral compass so that they can really help to bring improvements to the lives of people in Africa.
And underpinning all of that is education, and that's why you've got the African Leadership Group. Just picking in some of the examples or some of the stuff that your graduates have achieved, can you give us one of your, not your proudest, I don't want you to pick amongst them, but some examples of what they've gone on to achieve?
Sure, one example I'll tell you is something that's unfolding right now as we speak. There's a young man named Eddie Okech who 12 years ago was a street kid in Kenya. And through one of our programs, he came, we gave him education, and then we got him to get further education here in the United States. He went to Trinity College in Connecticut, and then he went to Yale to do a master's degree. And now he's back in Kenya, and he's running to be a senator. He is running in a field of about 12 candidates who are all in their 60s and 70s, and he's 28, and he's number 2 in the race. So he could become one of the youngest senators in Kenya's history. So we have many, many examples of this, but this is just one that's unfolding right now. And it's been exciting to watch these young people emerge and to mentor them as they go through different stages of their lives, and looking forward to them really bringing on a new generation of leadership to the continent.
And so we've talked a bit about the education part, and switching gears, you mentioned earlier funding. I heard you speak recently, and something that I'm personally excited about is the Africa Rising Bond. Can you please tell us a bit more about that?
Well, one of the things that's unique about our model is that because of the scale of what we're trying to do, we're looking to educate 3 million leaders in 6,000 days. We're going to need a lot of capital to fund this leadership development project. And so instead of going and trying to look for philanthropy only and donations, which is not sustainable in the long term, we've developed a concept known as income sharing arrangements, where we raise capital from investors through this African Rising Bond that we're talking about, where they buy a bond. It's a capital, it's a financial instrument. They get 6% interest over 5 years. And that finances the leadership development, the education of these young people. And then when they begin working and start their ventures, they pay back 10% of their income for 5 years to the investors. So what that means is that we're using global capital markets to drive human capital development in Africa in a sustainable way. Investors get a return, young people in Africa get free or reduced cost education and access to networks, and then we get the revenue that we need to run our operations today. So it's an ecosystem that really allows a sustainable way of developing human capital in Africa.
When we speak about sustainable development, that's exactly it. Exactly. Sort of a win-win and what's in it for me for all parties around. And I've seen a couple of your TED Talks as well, and just like today, you're always inspiring. What continues to drive you? Because this isn't an easy task in less than 6,000 days. What gives you hope?
Well, we have a slogan at AL Group known as, where we say, do hard things. And what drives me is my passion for Africa. I love the continent. I've lived in so many different countries in Africa. And when you love something, you want to make it great. And so I believe that those of us who've been fortunate enough to get education and to be healthy and to have the networks that we do, our job shouldn't be to do small things. We need to do big things, and we need to do hard things that really enable us to create opportunity for others. Because that's the only way that you can justify your privilege. And so what drives me is passion for the people of Africa and the willingness to do the hard things that we need to do to uplift our continent.